From UFOs to psychic powers and government conspiracies, history is riddled with unexplained events. You can turn back now or learn the stuff they don't want you to know. A production of iHeartRadio.
Hello, welcome back to the show. My name is Matt.
My name is Noel.
They call me Ben. We're joined as always with our super producer, Alexis, codename Doc Holliday Jackson. Most importantly, you are here, and that makes this stuff they don't want you to know. It is time for our listener mail segment of the week, and we have some doozies for you. We've been getting so much voicemail recently that we, before we got started today, we talked a little bit about how we're going to tackle it. We still we're working on it. We're working on it. We have a list. We're checking it twice. Today we've got some amazing rabbit hole emails, and as we've been doing with some of these segments in the past, one of us picked something a little bit lighter as a bit of a break or a palate cleanser, because the other stuff is so heavy. We have people who find themselves struggling with the belief system currently known as QAnon. We have people asking questions about what happens when you leave the U.S. military, but you're still not retirement age, and you have what Liam Neeson would call a certain set of skills. And then we have another question that I think, I don't know about you guys, but it's been bugging me personally for a number of years. It's about mattresses. But no spoilers. No spoilers. I do think these are three incredibly important topics. Maybe the mattress one is not as important, but just we're going to do it anyway. Just roll with it. This thing that's happening right now, Noel, you have found a wonderful email that pertains to something on everybody's mind recently, QAnon. And I think both Matt and I have had some personal experience with some of this stuff.
Yeah, as have I. I think it's something that's touched a lot of people, and it's so unexpected because I think when we all first heard about this, it just seemed like the fringiest of the fringe. You know, it did not strike me personally anyway as something that would take hold and get mainstreamed so much. But as we learned from our fantastic discussion with Jake Hanrahan about his amazing podcast, Q Clearance, that goes into a lot of this, it is, I think, a combination of almost like a perfect storm of circumstances led to QAnon being so mainstreamed. First and foremost being the way it was handled by the Trump administration and not condemning it, but also what led it to even pick up the kind of critical mass that it did. I think a lot of it had to do with people being really isolated and looking for answers and literally being stuck in their homes because of COVID and quarantine. And it really does give you kind of some pretty fascinating rabbit holes to go down until you kind of look at it all from a distance, a bit more of a remove, and realize that a lot of the stuff that goes into it just makes absolutely no sense, just on a functional, just on like a, consistency level, but also the notion that, Democrats are part of a elite cabal of pedophiles and murderers and cannibals. It just, it requires some pretty serious suspension of disbelief. So the email that we got was from Valerie, who says, "Hey guys, my husband and I discovered your show last year and have been completely hooked ever since. I was browsing Reddit tonight and came across an AMA thread from an ex-QAnon believer. I was fascinated by the thread and the discussion about the psychology and tactics of cults. Because let's make no mistake, while you can't necessarily point to a leader, I mean, maybe this Q figure you could consider to be the leader, but not in the same way traditional cults have a single human being that is the figurehead at the fore of the movement. QAnon is a basically decentralized internet-based cult. So Valerie goes on to say, I thought I'd pass along the thread. It would be super awesome if you got the Redditor on the show to talk about his experience. If not, maybe just an episode or segment about ex-QAnoners. I'm sure there are some folks talking about it. Boy, are there ever. And yeah, this Reddit thread is, it actually was locked because of a lot of, divisive chatter on it, and some kind of abusive folks that were, coming in here and kind of hijacking the thread, et cetera, as, the internet is wont to do. But I think the most interesting thing to me about this was the recommendations this person, having been on the inside, made for folks who are trying to reach people, loved ones perhaps, that have been kind of sucked into this situation. I think an initial reaction for some would be kind of throwing your hands up and being really angry and disappointed that someone that would be taken in by this. But oftentimes that kind of behavior and that kind of judgment just causes people to double down more. And I think we've got some stories, from personal experiences of that very thing. But this is one of the most, I think, interesting takeaways from the AMA. Realize you likely can't argue your Q out of their beliefs. This is the hardest thing to admit. Cults, harmful religions, and CTs. Ben, what does CT stand for? I've been seeing it all over this post.
Conspiracy theory, or short for CON space T is another abbreviation. This is common to, I think, as we mentioned in an earlier thing, a common way to get people committed to a cult-like belief is to have exclusivity in terminology or jargon.
You're absolutely right.
It can also stand for theorists.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
For sure. Thank you for clarifying. So cults, harmful religions, and CTs are all-inclusive belief systems. Often, they provide us-them narrative of the world with good guys, bad guys, sheeple, and enlightened. They provide a sort of moral framework. They provide meaning, community, belonging, ego-boosting, and answers to sometimes good questions. They are a sort of mega-belief that rests on multiple separate pillars, thus no one single pillar falling is enough to topple it. I think that's a fabulous point. Attacking a CT's belief head-on will be met with excuses and rationalizations, but likely not honest introspection. I think we've seen this time and time again with cults throughout history. Try out, this is a really great point here made by the poster, try out street epistemology and learn about critical thinking, cult behavior, and the psychology behind these things. I mentioned Peter Boghossian. He has a neat, non-threatening way of exploring and unpacking people's beliefs. I have no idea how successful they would be with CT's Qs, but the concept seems promising to me. The BITE cult model, BITE, stories of people who left Westboro Baptist, Scientology, Mormonism, etc., might shed light on the sorts of factors that result in people escaping harmful ideologies. Realize that cult stuff like Q is a sort of mind virus. They have been programmed, and deprogramming is not easy. Rick Allen Ross seems like a good source of info on this stuff, though I don't have a lot of experience with him. So some really good, reading materials here, advice coming from someone who was inside of this kind of belief system and was able to escape it mentally. And I mean, this is a mental thing entirely. It's interesting. You're not like going to a place. You're not living in a compound. But the compound is like all of the internet, and it's probably the easiest, most low level buy-in of a cult is just having to log on and click on things on the internet, as opposed to having to show up, perhaps do rituals, live among your fellow cult members. But this, I'd love to hear, Ben and Matt, your thoughts on this and any stories of individuals that you've come across who maybe are still in this or have kind of found their way through it.
I'll just have a quick story here. The other day, I was being a dad and hanging with other dads at the park with our children and met a new person named Rich. I will just call him Rich for this. He runs an Atlanta Bitcoin meetup and is a fascinating dude into cryptocurrency, very intelligent and doing very well for himself. And he was describing at some of these meetups, there would every once in a while be a person who would describe themselves as a QAnon believer or a Q. And he just had a particular interaction with this person where it seemed as though he was just attempting to not bring him out of the Q thing, but, just talk with him rationally about it. And he was having difficulty with this person using thought terminating cliches, something we've mentioned before a lot on the show. And one thing that this post mentions at the bottom down, it's an edit down at the bottom of this Reddit thread, where he's saying that, cults use these and he uses the phrase thought terminating cliches. And the one that QAnon uses is, quote, trust the plan, which is very similar to a lot of religions phrase that you would use. The Lord works in mysterious ways, this kind of thing where it's just like, don't worry, it's going to, you don't have to understand everything. It's there's reason behind all of this.
I love this one from Mormonism, Matt, that I'd never heard before. Doubt your doubt.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
The only reason why I bring up Rich is that, the people that meet up with him in these things are a lot of times a bit quiet. So a lot of times keep to themselves, but are also doing very well financially. And it's interesting to me that, just how we as humans can operate and, have such varying beliefs and widely different beliefs, but also still be very successful, also still be very,
yeah.
And the whole point there in just bringing up this interaction that I had is that this person that I just met said he had just met this new person and he identified that immediately. And to me, the group of people that he meets up with are all interested in cryptocurrency and specifically in trading and watching, the trends and buying and selling in the markets. And you have to be intelligent to understand how those markets work and to be successful within them. And it doesn't matter how, quote, educated you are or intelligent you are. This kind of thinking can sweep up at anybody.
Mm-hmm. Especially when it's when it creates a feedback loop of irrepressible self-validation. It's such a pet peeve of mine when people conflate intelligence with some sort of immunity to fallacies. I mean, don't forget, a ton of people who graduated Harvard were racist when they came in and they were racist when they left. That is also a logical fallacy. I would say what makes QAnon an easy buy-in comparatively is not just the cult-like practices, which we outlined in an earlier video, but also the AR gamification aspect of it. We've had a lot of game designers come in and say, like, well, this is how I would have hooked people. This is how I would make kind of a slot machine of the mind that's always paying off a little bit and a little bit and a little bit and getting you into sunk cost on a deep emotive level. And then, of course, I think anybody outside of this, when reading the QAnon lore, which you can call it lore now, I think I can't be the only person who read this and thought, whoa, big failed screenwriter energy here, bub. It did also turn out, by the way, that one major QAnon influencer was identified just, January 15th as a writer, a failed screenwriter named Robert Cornero Jr. Or if I need to be more fair, an aspiring screenwriter. It's uncool to call him failed. But with this in mind, I would just like to read, I want to be careful for anonymity. I would like to read some statements I found from people who doubled down post-election on QAnon. Let's see, leading up to QAnon, I'm going to keep this person, as anonymous as possible. I'm going to read this and get you guys' reaction. Did you see all the executive orders Trump put out today on January 18th? He's not fighting for a job. President Trump has invested everything in you and me. He's not going to concede in 2 days. Do you hear me? He's allowed this to play out because he's protecting us as an incredible leader. He's not about to quit on us. He's a genius, a master chess player. This is all according to plan. God bless America and our
Trust the plan.
That's the plan. The same person after the election, went a little bit nuts, saying, see, it's all part of the plan. Don't lose your faith. Don't believe everything you see and hear today. It's all in motion behind the scenes. He won't let us down. It might take some time. The best is yet to come. God spread JFK Jr. I think that might be a typo. But as you guys know, JFK Jr. is a big figure in the lore here. I love the point. Noel, I love the point that this poster makes on Reddit. It is tempting to try to bully people to change their beliefs. It's tempting to yell at them because really what you're doing is just sort of mentally pleasuring yourself by making yourself feel like you're even more righteous and validated. You're not helping that person. And I would argue that most people who are yelling at somebody to try to get them to change their beliefs aren't really trying to change their beliefs. They're just trying to yell at someone. Street epistemology is a cool name. It's also a Socratic method. Listen to someone, hear them out, phrase things as questions, and participate in active listening. Because God knows we are surrounded by thought-terminating cliches every single moment of the day. No one is any better in that regard.
I think another really valuable takeaway from this Reddit post is the idea of taking care of yourself as well when you're trying to not rescue somebody, but make somebody see the light. Like there have to be boundaries that you set for yourself, whether it's a family member, a loved one, or just a friend, because this stuff is toxic. And if you keep putting yourself out there time and time again, and the person keeps, pushing this stuff on you and not respecting those boundaries, there comes a point where you do have to just say, okay, well, I tried. I did my best, and it's not your responsibility to save everybody. They say, this person says, love them, be there for them, but set boundaries. If nothing above works, you need to protect yourself and manage the potential damage and fallout on the relationship. Luckily, I didn't hurt my family much because they mostly ignored my rants and ramblings. If it's taking a toll on you, you may need to make it clear that you just can't engage with them about this anymore. And, I'm going to be completely candid. My mother isn't a QAnon person, but there are certain things that she believes that I've had to draw a line in the sand and just say, I respectfully ask that we not discuss this, because I just, it's difficult for me to engage. And that's on me, honestly. Like reading this, it almost makes me feel like that was a cop out on my part, because I have taken the attack more of getting upset and not treating her like with, it's so easy to just, condemn somebody for their beliefs as opposed to trying to hear them out, and not hear them out like, oh, I maybe you can convince me, because at least that to me, some of these things are just lines in the sand so often. But there are some other tactics that I think are important. Explore their doubts, the poster says. Maybe there's something that your Q doesn't understand or doesn't make sense. What is it? Asking questions is not the same as confronting, and if done well, might have a chance to crack some of their ideas or find out if there are any conspiracies they don't believe. I hated flat earthers and lizard folk while fully convinced we were being visited by aliens and Democrats were eating babies. Maybe if I'd been encouraged to explore that discrepancy, I would have flexed my atrophied critical thinking muscle. Because again, a big part about those thought-terminating cliches is to shut down critical thinking.
Sure. Yeah. And the dilemma about that is that thought-terminating cliches are to a degree necessary for the type of abbreviated, dense communication that we use in the current era. We don't have a lot of deep learning. And frankly, there's often not time for deep conversations in most people's lives. But it can go too far, just like, carrots are great for you, but you can eat too many carrots, which is not my best analogy, but we still have more time for 2021 to have a good one.
True.
The issue on the table is one of sunk cost fallacy. It's also one of, I would say, pitchforking, because you have to remember, when people are confronted, this goes back into our earlier episode on why you can't win an argument online. When people are confronted in what they feel is a belligerent way about something they believe or hold to be true, neurochemical research shows that they will double down. The part of your brain, sometimes called the reptilian brain, that has the anger and the bad stuff and the kill or be killed things, that is, activity spikes there when people are confronted, especially if they feel confronted. And it doesn't matter whether or not there are facts involved in that case, because then one of the reasons people, I haven't read this thread, but one of the reasons people can sometimes fall into demonstrably untrue conspiracy theories is because if there is a seed of truth to it, it feels like critical thinking. It feels very much the same. And to our brain, sometimes the way that your brain cannot recognize the difference between fake laughter and real laughter, to our brain, this process of synthesis and analysis feels the same, whether we're looking at something that is actually true or is just something we believe to be true. In this case, it's a little different, though, because they did have foreign assistance. Like QAnon movement had foreign disinfo assistance, but maybe not as much as people would like to think. A lot of the seeds for this were homegrown and were there. You know what I mean? The car parts were already there. At one point or another, someone was bound to build the actual car and drive it. I don't know. See, I see some XQ stuff happening, but I also see this evolving over time. Maybe to something different. The beautiful, insidious thing about trust the plan is that the plan always changes, right? Like the predictions have been wrong on the Q clock. The predictions have been wrong regarding policy. The most recent, I think perhaps the most shrill arguments leading up to the election were incorrect in that they also cited things that just don't happen in government. It's not as if the U.S. government has had for more than 2 centuries some kind of secret plan or secret, legal mechanism that they just never happened to use. You know what I mean? It doesn't bear up to scrutiny, but that doesn't mean the person who believes that should be anathema. It's not worth losing a real relationship with a loved one if there is a viable alternative, which is hearing them out, listening more than we speak, and asking well-intentioned questions, no gotcha questions. Just be like, okay, well, what do you think about blah, blah, blah? Well, who do you think Q is? Well, that's interesting. Why do you think that? That kind of stuff, Socrates had it right, I think.
That's very good, man.
100%.
Socratic method all day. It's not easy to live with a conspiracy realist or a conspiracy theorist. Just ask my wife. And, it's sorry to any and all loved ones out there, but hopefully it's a mixture of good and bad, because that's what this is the line that we explore on the show, right? That's why this show exists. That line between what is real and what is not, and how do we navigate that, and let's do it together. So I just want to say thank you so much for writing in.
Oh, and last point too. It's pretty clear that I believe that Noel, Matt, and I do not subscribe to and have not subscribed to the set of beliefs or allegations or claims made by QAnon. But if you do in particular, then please don't be afraid to write in. I want to hear you out. I'm not going to instantly say, that's hogwash. I'm going to listen to what people are saying. And the thing is that we did not find any of those predictions that came true. And we got dunked on pretty hard by some listeners who very much did believe in QAnon and very much did think we were giving it short shrift. But we did our due diligence, I would say, and we couldn't find anything provable about it. But the important part of this sort of reasoning is to put the truth over the opinion or the comfort level. So don't be afraid and don't feel like weirded out. No one's gonna mock you or just send you some kind of egregious meme. We want to hear from you.
Although I am a fan of an egregious meme, I'm not going to lie.
But
absolutely. So whether or not you found your way in it or you're in the thick of it, send us your stories. And I completely am on board with you, Ben. I mean, I do not subscribe to any of this, and I think a lot of it is pretty toxic and dangerous. But I am absolutely here with an open mind to have a conversation about it with anyone.
Well said. And with that, thanks again to our listener. We're going to pause for a word from our sponsor, and we'll be back with something completely different, something that may also be a conspiracy. Okay, I can't do the Eddie Murphy thing and start laughing at jokes before I make them. Anyway, sponsors. And we are back. We received a wonderful email from Bridget G. Here's what you said, Bridget. Bridget said, "Hi, guys. I love your podcast. It's interesting and entertaining. They call me a paranoid Cliff Clavin. Haha, all in fun. I have this curiosity that has got me wondering for some time now. I don't know if this is common in other states, but in Minnesota, we have so many RV dealers, acres of them, and hundreds of mattress stores. I did a quick search on the RVs, and there was 84, 7 in my little hometown alone. The mattress stores are endless. So what the heck? Most people buy maybe 3 mattresses in their adult life. And then RVs. Who's buying all of these? The math doesn't add up. Are these legit businesses or fronts for something? Money laundering, some kind of corporate tax fraud? Can you guys help me out? Can you kill my curiosity? Thanks, Bridget." Well, thank you, Bridget. First off, no, we're never going to kill your curiosity. Our show depends upon people having curiosity. So we can't help you there, but we can try to answer at least a couple of these questions, because it turns out that Matt, Noel, and I, along with Mission Control and several of our colleagues, we have talked about the weird thing with mattress stores often, sometimes over a few drinks, I'll admit, because we're baffled. Just down the street from our hallowed studios, Conspiracy HQ, we just decided to call it apparently, in Atlanta, Georgia, the meme is true on the streets. There are 2 mattress firms directly across from one another on a street called Moreland. And these mattress firms are not different in any way other than their physical location.
Yeah, other than one's easier to get to going in one direction, the other is easier to get to going in the other direction. Clearly the demand is that high. Yeah, I mean, what is going on?
Maybe there's a subterranean passage linking them, and it's all just the same mattress store, the way that Quaking Aspen appears to be a bunch of different trees, but it's one gigantic organism. Maybe all mattress firms are Quaking Aspen style. I don't know.
Clearly these mattresses are stuffed with all manner of illicit products.
Right. Maybe there's some code, you know what I mean? Like you ask for the footless mattress. Like, I'll have the hands-free mattress from the back.
I don't understand.
Yeah, so this is an interesting question. There are a couple of ways to tackle it. RVs, I'll be kind of a separate thing, but the mattresses. First off, I was so clueless on this. I think I may have mentioned it on the show before. I drove past multiple mattress firms for years and years and years. And it wasn't until a couple of years back that I realized it's supposed to be some sort of pun. I thought it just meant mattress organization, or like...
I mean, technically you want your mattress to have just the right amount of sink, just the right amount of bounce, not too firm, not too soft. You know what I mean? It's that Goldilocks zone is what you want.
It's up there with the time that I realized the primary ingredient in traditional soy sauce is, soy. So look, even if you overthink things, you're going to miss some stuff. So with this, there are a couple of answers. There are a couple of possibilities. One, probably the most boring, the most mundane, is that a store like a mattress store doesn't actually have to sell that many mattresses to make their rent and some profit every month, right? Like a mattress isn't particularly cheap unless you buy a used one off Craigslist.
It's true. It depends on how many employees you have, and other costs like electricity and all these other things. Because I can imagine, it is true. You sell a couple of mattresses, you're good to have a couple people work in the store. I went into one not long ago, and there was a single employee in there, and I actually made a purchase in a mattress firm, you guys. So I may be contributing to this whole problem. It was just a bed frame, but still, it was like $200-$300 or something. So it wasn't a cheap buy.
Well, it's especially with, obviously in the podcast business, we've all, worked very closely with Casper and Purple and all of these like online, Wayfair will send you a mattress. You can get the bargain basement one off of Amazon. And living in a society that increasingly kind of eschews going into brick and mortar showrooms, because we don't want to like talk to humans, I guess. It's very interesting that these things are still around. And I guess to your point, Ben, of the fact that they can be kind of skeleton crude, I still don't quite get it because they have to pay commissions, as well. I mean, that's the only way that folks that sell them probably make money, right? It's a commission-based thing if you're actually working in a showroom, I imagine.
Well, maybe if we break it down by month, right? Let's say, just picking numbers out of the air, let's say a store pays $10K a month in rent. That's pretty high, right? In most parts of the world. So let's say their margin of profit is like 50% and they're selling mattresses for $1,000, very expensive mattresses. Then I'm doing this just to make very easy math. If you sell one mattress per day, in 20 days, you've made rent, and the rest of those 10 days, that's all profit. That's everything else you need, right? I guess you would say rent, let's say that's rent and utilities, and insurance, operating costs, whatever. So it could be possible that it's just very easy to make money off of a mattress store. Or it was, because to your point, Noel, the rise of online mattress ordering, is probably a huge disruptor for this. So that's like the boring, mundane answer. And it's probably true in many situations. The math might just work out. But again, there are problems.
There are problems, and before we get to those, just want to say one last thing in support of this business model. You could argue too that having a showroom is so rare these days that it's almost like having advertising. It's almost like having like a very expensive billboard that you can walk into, because you can still order. Can't you order Mattress Firm stuff through a website as well, or do they exclusively work out of showrooms?
I'm not familiar with the workings of the firm.
I know you can call them and they'll have it ready for you when you pick it up.
We also have to point out that the conspiratorial aspect, the idea that there was money laundering involved. A lot of times when someone is trying to launder money, people will have storefronts that are just operations to clean dirty money. But often those are going to be things where a lot of cash transactions occur, like casinos or car washes, as Breaking Bad presented, or,
parking lots.
Parking lot. Yeah, that's a great example. I was going to say a very, very high volume laundromat, but they would have to be washing a lot of underwear or mattress sheets. Yes. Okay. To keep things thematic. So if somebody is laundering money through a mattress store, it may not be their best choice, except for one thing. There is one real conspiracy that happened in the world of mattress manufacturing, and it is this. Mattresses used to be much more expensive to manufacture. The margin on a mattress used to be lower, slimmer, smaller. As the cost of manufacturing mattresses went down, blame it on outsourcing, blame it on better production methods, etc., the retail price stayed approximately the same. So that margin, get bigger, so this is on camera in case this is YouTube, so that margin goes from like a teeny bit here to a much higher proportion there. Still not as large a margin as, say, a pizza joint or popcorn at the movie theater, but now you're making money that feels like hidden money. So now maybe if we wanted to launder money through a mattress store, which is of course the original dream the four of us had before we started podcast, then what you would do is this. You would start cooking the books, not necessarily on the customer facing end. You would start cooking the books internally on your internal cost. And so now instead of paying, $200 cost for a mattress that you sell for like $800, you say that you're buying it for $600 and that your markup is only $200. and then now you have an opportunity. There's something there. I phrased it kind of backwards, but you can see the gist here, right? Especially if you're the supplier. You say you're selling at 600, but you're really selling at 200. Then you get some wiggle room, right? You got some latitude. You can make the VIG work in your direction. So that's a real thing that happened. But as far as why there's so many, the primary argument against it being a common money laundering scheme is just that. There are so many.
Well, yeah. Did you see what they did? This was a market strategy, apparently, that Mattress Firm started doing, where they were buying up smaller chains. As they would buy those up, they would end up having a Mattress Firm right next to a Mattress Firm, because Mattress Firm previously would move into territory where there was already a local chain trying to sell mattresses and put it across the street to be like, what's up, Mattress Firm's here. How you doing? What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Sorry, little chain. And then they'd buy that little chain, and now there are two Mattress Firms looking at each other across Monroe. Or which one is it? Moreland?
Yeah. And this article has some interesting excerpts from a discussion on Reddit. What conspiracy theory do you 100% buy into and why? And other people from other parts of the country are pointing out the exact same thing. I remember seeing 4 Mattress Firms all on each corner of an intersection once. There is no way there is such a demand for mattresses. And then there's an edit. A few people seem confused. I'm talking about multiple of the same mattress store. And that's exactly what we're talking about. So we're very much on the same page.
There's also the point about showrooms, because most people still would prefer to buy a mattress in person. You're going to spend a third of your life on it, right? Ideally. So what you would be looking for is an in-person tryout. You want to go in and lay down on it. There's a great Key and Peele sketch about this too, but it's not appropriate for work. And then you would after that, I don't think this happens to a ton of people, but after that, some folks might be embarrassed. They might be like, I went and laid down on a dozen different things in your store. I have to buy at least one.
Dude, I have that feeling every time I go into a physical store. I've been walking around here for like 20 minutes. I got to buy something.
There's
that sunk cost fallacy thing again, right? Yeah.
Sir, do you need me to pull something from the shelf for you?
I'll just take the gum. Just give me the gum.
Give me the gum. I am on the complete opposite, and I'll go into a mattress store and just lay down on mattresses with zero intention of buying anything, just to catch a quick little, chill time when I'm at the mall. But I wanted to point out really quickly, I went to the Mattress Firm's website, and they do offer the same exact stuff that the Caspers and Purples and Lisas of the world offer. Free shipping, direct door-to-door, or including hauling away of your old mattress. They also offer a 120-night sleep trial, which is a big factor of Casper and a lot of those other companies. So you can send it back if you're not satisfied. And they have like in-house financing and all of that. And of course, they carry multiple brands. So it's interesting. I can see your point, Ben, about for some people, it is still important to be able to kick the tires on the thing. People don't like buying things sight unseen.
And the last point I would make there is really, if you want to have that vicarious living experience, I've never been kicked out of an IKEA, and I have fake lived in those before. It gets tricky around closing time. There was a guy in New York who lived at one.
Do you know the second biggest furniture retail company in the world?
Rooms to Go.
No.
What is it?
It's the company that owns Mattress Firm.
No.
It's called Steinhoff.
I've never even heard of that. Is it European?
South African.
Steinhoff. Never seen Steinhoff in
German.
my life.
I think it was German. Then the company moved to South Africa. I'm not exactly sure the whole background, but they purchased Mattress Firm for $2.4 billion.
Well, they're just a holding company. They're not like a store. They're just a holding company.
They're a holding company, but it's number 2 to IKEA, at least according to some reporting from WBUR.
Who else do they own, I wonder?
Well, Bridget, we are on the case. I just received a text from the deep state and our NSA intern. saying just thin ice, but with a heart emoji. So I don't think we're in too much trouble. I think we just need to pause, have a word from our sponsor, and return with a different story before the mattress octopus gets us.
Don't look up the name Marcus Juiced. All right, we are back, and we're going to jump to an email we got from, I'm going to use your name, Robert. Here it goes. Go ahead and use my name. My NSA agent probably knew I would send this before I did. I did, Robert, so you and your NSA agent, there you go. That's your name, Robert. He says, I won't mention anyone else's name, though. I know several ex-military that when they came back from deployment have complained about PCs, that's private contractors, and how they don't have to play by the same rules because they were there as private protection contractors and not as a country's armed forces. Some of them, after serving their time, have decided to get out instead of re-upping, going back, but then got a job as a PC and went right back to where they had just left. So I guess leaving their military service, then going back to the same place they were as a private military contractor. The ones I've asked why basically said that now they will finally get to shoot the bad guys and do the stuff they could not do as a soldier, and the pay is much better. Much, much better, he says. So how does this apply to me? When serving as a member of the U.S. Armed Forces, they have strict rules of engagement that prohibit them from being the aggressor or keep them from protecting the citizens living around them if they themselves are not threatened. It's very frustrating, and even more frustrating if a PC, a contractor, can shoot a known bad guy without it being an act of war. I think most who see this and are frustrated that they can't do anything about it are motivated to become private contractors themselves so they can go and do what they couldn't do themselves. To me, it's scary because it floods the market with hired guns. Okay, Robert, thank you so much for writing in and for telling us about your experience. On this show, we've talked about private military contractors before, a bit briefly, I think, in the audio side. We've got several videos you can go check out if you wish to kind of get a basis of knowledge around this topic. Or, maybe you have some experience yourself. Our coverage prior to this has largely been on that line that Robert is describing to you here between what's the difference between a military officer or, a soldier in a military and then a private contractor who is working on behalf of that military, and what rules apply to these two different people, and what, like, in practice, what does that look like? And some of the best examples that we've gotten before in the past in looking at this came from the war in Afghanistan and the war in Iraq, the most recent war in Iraq. I don't know if everyone remembers this, but back in the day, there was a massacre that occurred in Iraq at the hands of some Blackwater employees, private military contractors who were there in Iraq. And it was when the reporting came out about it, it was very harrowing. It was an awful thing that occurred. And originally, Ben, help me with this, but originally when the story broke, it felt as though these men weren't going to be tried, or they weren't going to be getting in trouble initially. And I think that's why there was such an outcry for it, because there were these civilians in Iraq that got massacred by private military contractors, and it seemed like there wasn't going to be any justice.
Talking about the Nisour Square massacre? That's
correct.
2007, Blackwater, yeah.
And that was just initially what occurred. Gosh, I'm having a hard time even recalling back to this time. Was that 2007?
Yes, that's correct. 2007.
Okay, so that was right before Stuff They Don't Want You to Know became a video series. And, we were still looking at this stuff and talking about it in the first several years of this show. But it was a rough thing to even think about, that the United States was sending over members of the military that were mercenaries. That you can think about it that way. These private military contractors are mercenaries, human beings with guns that have a mission to do a certain thing depending on what they're told to do.
For pay.
For pay, yeah. And the reason why I think it's important to address right now is because something happened about a month ago that applies to those specific Blackwater employees or former Blackwater employees who have been in jail for a long time, quite a time. They were pardoned by the outgoing President Donald Trump. Now, the reason why this is news is because it was 17 innocent civilian citizens who were gunned down in 2007. And then for the, the top official, the leader of the country that represented the killers to say you are pardoned, it feels like a massive blow.
It does. And just to be completely clear, they were tried and found guilty in a civilian court, right?
That is correct.
So, they would not have had the same protections, I guess you could call it, as actual members of the military who would be tried internally or court-martialed or what have you, based on whatever metric the Army uses to decide whether something is a war crime or just collateral damage. So this really blurs that line, doesn't it?
It does. It does. And, we're not going to sit here and tell you it's an easy situation to deal with threats when you're operating in the field somewhere, no matter who you are, if you're military or private contractor. It's not easy to assess dangers that are around you. And it's not always a black and white situation when, you have to fire your weapon or you decide to fire your weapon. But in this particular circumstance, I think it's a little easier to see that there were unnecessary deaths that occurred here. And, again, it's easy for me to say sitting here behind a microphone as a guy who's never been in combat, but good God, it's tough. Anyway, we don't have to get stuck on the pardons thing, which is worth your time if you want to look that up. What I do just want to continue talking about is the future of private military contractors, other instances that have occurred where contractors have done something that they shouldn't have done and either gotten away with it or, we just don't know about yet. I think it would be worth it for everyone listening right now and for us personally to look into that stuff further. And we would love to hear from you if you're listening out there and you have experience.
Matt, what was it that led this to be such a big news story? Obviously, it was reported, so there were journalists present, something happened, and to your point, I feel like stuff like this could happen in a vacuum, and we'd never hear about it. But what about this particular case caused it to be such a, create such a public outcry?
I feel like such a dunce here, Ben. Was it not leaked as part of a WikiLeaks thing? I feel like that's how I remember learning about it. I know it's not the Iraq War tapes. I'm just having a hard time recalling because so many things were coming out from WikiLeaks around that time. Around 2008, 2000, or maybe it was 2009. But it was just, I remember watching the video footage of some of it and reading the stories when we made those videos, Ben. And it just...
Well, we know that the New York Times reported on this in 2007, September 27th. And there were guards who witnessed the incident who also, Blackwater guys, who said that they felt the shootings were unjustified. And then journalists began digging around and seeing some increasingly troubling things about oversight, about the number of incidents wherein Blackwater employees were firing first, regardless of circumstance. One of the reasons this was such a big deal, these pardons on December 22nd, 2020, is because the people who got pardoned had been sentenced to, one of them had been sentenced to life in prison. The other three had been sentenced to 30 years in prison each. And that was in 2015, because they went to trial in 2014. And this was a long legal saga. So they served about 5 years, if you want to call it that, a little more than 5 years. And this was seen as a profound insult to the family members of the victims, as well as Iraqi citizens in general, where, as you can imagine, the U.S. has not the best reputation. It also brings up, I think this is what this is what you're talking about, Robert. It brings up some of these even larger questions about the role of private contractors, or if you want to call them mercenaries, in what their role is in a state military or state level armed forces, armed service. Because, I don't know if you guys remember what's called the Rent-A-Coup scandal.
I do not recall that. What is that?
This is the accusation of, you can read a great thing by the Brookings Institution on this, called outsourcing war. And this happened before the events that we're talking about with Blackwater. The idea was that the private military industry would give several things. Plausible deniability, right? So you can say it wasn't necessarily our country attacking you. It would also blur the lines between civilians and soldiers, which, terrorism does that too, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then it also had a profit motive. It can make a lot of money for some people, not for everybody, but it can make a lot of money for people. And at least according to Brookings, the private military industry, it's very much a thing, emerged at the start of the 1990s. But I would be very careful with that. You could say maybe the modern private military industry emerged at the start of the 1990s, but the history of war is lousy with mercenaries. Like it's a real thing. And also, just to be completely fair, when we say mercenaries, we're talking about people who are in active hot combat, right? Direct conflicts. A private contractor or private military contractor is not always that. They could be someone who's tasked with repairing vehicles, right? They could be someone who's tasked with driving a truck somewhere in a foreign country. There's not all of these people are like ex special forces or something like that. It's very important to make that distinction.
It reminds me of Halliburton and all the people who were
right.
in Iraq and Afghanistan building bases.
Mm-hmm. Or people who have decided to take, I don't know, it's tough because you could argue there's something similar with the revolving door in the defense industry, right? You put your time in, you get to a high enough level in Uncle Sam's organization, and then you just on the strength of your connections join a private organization. So now you've got to sell all these new missiles. So you've got to sell this new this new helicopter armament or module. So you are the person who knows Senator Farfignugan, right? Because you worked together when you were in the Army. So people will pay you easily $500,000 just because you know that guy, and you can call him and say, you know what's really kick ass? This new stuff we have for Apaches.
Farfel's always good with the Apache stuff. I noticed that.
Well, I think it's important for us to say, like, when we're talking about this private public practice, not everybody involved is a soldier. And I think it's also, it's still troubling from like the halls of Washington all the way out to the most remote locale you could imagine. This is troubling because it can make a double standard. You know what I mean? And then what happens in negotiations when two countries or two groups are trying to reach a peace accord of some sort, and they say, okay, look, you need to answer for this war crime that was committed. What happens when the negotiator is like, well, that technically wasn't us. We paid them, but it wasn't us.
Yeah, what happens when it's not a private military contractor anymore and it's an Alphabet, Boston... I was about to say Boston Market. Boston Dynamics.
Boston Market is huge in international conflict. That's their main stream of income, I think, right?
But like a Boston Dynamics creation, one of these robots that is armed at some point in the future and carrying out missions the same way a private contractor would, and it malfunctions or does something incorrect, who gets blamed then? That's what our future is going to look like. Mm-hmm. I think it's worth us talking about this more, and we should.
Well, I wanted to ask a quick question of both of you guys. what are your thoughts in general on the institution of the presidential pardon? I know that's a big question, but it's always like kind of skeezed me out a little bit. It's like, did you break the law? Were you convicted? Then that should stand. Like it feels like, I know maybe it's harder to swallow when it's something that feels unjust like this. And there are certainly people that perhaps have been wrongfully convicted where a pardon makes sense. This one did not feel that way. But in general, it seems like an awful lot of power for one person to just unequivocally wield with no oversight.
It's kind of weird because it ends up being your personal perspective and the perspective of the president, right? That's really the only thing that comes into it. I wish it was more limited. I wish it was fewer pardons could be given out, you know.
Is there a hard number?
I don't. If there is, I don't know it. But I've never seen anyone say, "Whoa, slow down on the pardoning, Mr. President."
Yeah, there's no explicit hard number. The biggest limiting factor is that you can grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the U.S. except in cases of impeachment. Now, remember, impeachment can apply to like a member of the judicial branch as well. Mm-hmm. So that's what you cannot touch with this. It was controversial from the time from the time of its inception. You know, people like George Mason said, he had this, I think it was Mason, had this quote where he was basically saying, look, pardons make sense if every president is as good as George Washington. And let's be honest, my dudes, not all the presidents that come after him are going to be as good as this guy. We kind of lucked out. And everybody's like, no, come on, man. We're doing a country thing. It's going to be great. We're start a country bit. So yeah, pardons.
Well, and even then, like, imagine in the Revolutionary War, if you're going to pardon someone who was working for the country, who was, you know, would be considered a patriot by many, but maybe that person killed, you know, 15 people in an effort to create that country and fight for the formation of the United States. Some people are going to think that person should stay in jail forever or do whatever, you know, remain. This is completely made up. I'm just saying, like, you're going to have differing viewpoints. It's the freedom fighter terrorist thing, right?
Well, also, I don't want to derail us here, but with the idea of a pardon, you'll hear it being portrayed as a mechanism for combating corruption, for a flawed judicial process. Because remember, the primary threat or the primary potential for corruption in the judicial branch is the fact that judges are often appointed rather than elected. And, you know, if you get ring wraith status and you're one of the Supremes, then you're in there for life or until you cry, Uncle Sam, I guess. So there is this, it's meant to, and I think it's well-intentioned, it's meant to give the executive branch the ability to directly combat corruption in some other way, you know? And it plays a huge role, or like clemency as well, plays a huge role when we talk about capital punishment, which the U.S. has just historically not done a great job with, right? And you can go back after you've killed an innocent person and admit that you killed an innocent person, but they're still dead, you know? So there's a lot riding on this. But pardons are, I think, still going to be controversial for a long time, regardless of the administration.
Agreed. Yep. And hey, we're going to end here. Thank you so much for writing in, Robert. And
thank you so much, Bridget. If you are affiliated, by the way, in any shape, form, or fashion with a mattress store, give us the scoop. You know what I mean? You can contact us. You can contact us directly. We can't wait to hear from you.
And if you're a mattress sponsor, hey, we're looking for them. So come our way.
And as we had said earlier, of course, if you are a former member of QAnon or you currently believe that there is still some sand to some of this stuff, even if not all of it, then we'd love to hear from you as well.
You can find us in the usual social media spots. We are Conspiracy Stuff and Conspiracy Stuff Show on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can also find us on our Facebook group. Here's where it gets crazy.
That's right. If you don't want to use social media, hey, check it out. Pick that thing up that you're on TikTok on all day and give us a call. We are 1-833-STDWYTK. You can leave us a message. You will hear Ben. You will know exactly what to do. And we'll listen for 3 minutes. I am putting out a call to you, though. I do have one request. We have been getting in so many voicemails. Please do your absolute best to leave one message. And don't send us like 4 in a row or 5 in a row. Our voicemail box literally can only hold so many, and we are filling up faster than we can hear them. So, please do call us. Just call us one time and make it succinct, and we would appreciate you very much. And if you don't want to do that, there is a good old-fashioned way to contact us through that email. We are
conspiracy@iheartradio.com.
Stuff They Don't Want You to Know is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.